Hi, I'm Representative Al Baldessaro, and we're back again with our show, Who's Looking Out for You? And my lovely co-host, the representative from Merrimack, Jeanine. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Al. Same here.
Once again, I'm asked the same question. How many miles did you do today?
Oh, today I ran 5, so my year-to-date total is 905.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow, unbelievable.
So I'll get to 1,000 next month.
I'm jealous. I used to run every day, but since I broke my pelvis in 3 places and hold the muscles
could cause a
together,
problem.
them days are over of running, so you're making up for what I'm missing.
Yeah, I didn't used to run this
Have
much.
you been at the State House doing anything exciting at all?
No, I haven't been up
No?
there at all.
I was up there for a few bill signings, and that's about
Oh,
it.
I did see that you were
Yeah.
there for, what did he sign? Play-based kindergarten.
The play-based kindergarten, I thought was a win-win. But we got a special
But
guest.
we do. I was going to tell you, I don't know what's going on because I challenged myself to get off Facebook
Wow.
for a month. So I'm not going to even know anything that's going on until August.
Don't worry about a thing. My wife will make up for what you and I are both missing.
Okay.
Because I'm on with my phone. People think, oh, you're on all the time. No, I just answer stuff. But anyways, we got a special guest.
We do.
Matter of fact, he's the former chief of staff under Bill O'Brien.
That was my freshman year,
Your
my
freshman
freshman
year.
term, the 162nd state legislator.
And now he runs the American for Prosperity. Greg Moore.
Hey,
welcome
thank you,
to
Representative
Londonderry.
Baldessaro,
Hey, Greg.
Representative
Yeah.
Nada. Thanks for having me.
Greg and I,
I've
of
known
course,
you for years.
Yeah, we both known him for years, and
I'm Jeanine.
he took over for a bulldog who I knew very well, Corey Lewandowski, and everyone thought Corey was bad. Greg, he's well loved. Greg,
Well, I don't know. The jury's out because I overheard a conversation, because people were complaining. Oh, AFP is going after me and does this, and you said, well, but when Corey was here, did
Greg,
he do more?
Tell us, what have you been doing? I mean, AFP. What is AFP?
What is AFP?
So,
Yeah, there we go.
Sure, Americans for Prosperity is an organization that's committed to expanding economic opportunity to everyone, and particularly to benefit those who are the least fortunate by giving them opportunity to move out of poverty into opportunity, as well as to give everybody the best chance to define success on their terms, not the terms that government sets for them, but by their own terms intrinsically, allowing them to make the choices that benefit themselves and help in turn benefit all of society by making the decisions that each and every one of us makes so that we can choose the job we want, the location we want, and get the opportunities we want. That's why, for example, we were strong supporters for education savings accounts, which we thought was a great opportunity to give children an opportunity to get an education not purely based on their zip code and what local school they were sent to, but instead by what was the best opportunity for that child. Now that vote, as you guys know, came up just a little short in the House.
Right.
Yeah.
And
it
I
was
supported it.
it was
when I
a-
voted. We
SB
fought for that.
193 was the number.
It was disappointing. I know that Governor Sununu put a lot of time and effort into that legislation as well, and it really would have transformed, I think, our education system. Now, see, I think one of the big distinctions between folks like Americans for Prosperity and you versus a lot of folks on the other side is that we support public education, but public education doesn't necessarily have to happen in a public school. Public education could happen anywhere. Today, as our technology improves, online learning, as well as for example, homeschool opportunities, or even another public school might be the best opportunity for a child. And instead of saying to parents or families, you have to move your family to a new school district, or somehow you have to eat the burden of paying the property tax for your child
Are
to
you
go
trying
to
to
school.
say one size doesn't fit all? Is that what
One
you're
size
saying?
does not fit all, and what we think is that if we're going to have students who are prepared to enter our job market, and our job market has evolved quite a bit from the time, even when we got out of high school and out of college, it's evolved a great deal. And we need to give our students now the opportunities to move into that job market by giving them the best opportunities. On the other hand, we also have to work to make sure that the market is strong for jobs and opportunity, and we do that by allowing the employers to actually have the opportunity to grow and expand here. And we've done a lot of work here in New Hampshire with that. As both of you know, been around for a while, AFP led the efforts to provide tax relief to our employers here in New Hampshire. And we've seen some substantial tax reduction that has allowed our businesses to thrive. As a result, more people are working in New Hampshire than ever before. our workforce is bigger than it's ever been. It's amazing to listen to the economists saying, well, where are all these people coming from? Well, you know what, as more opportunity comes to the state, more job opportunities, and wages start to come up because of the demand for workers, people who hadn't been working decide, I'm going to rejoin the workforce.
That's right.
I'm going to come back into the workforce. And it's funny because I was talking to someone at a Panera up in Manchester.
And a Panera.
And she was 55 years old. She said she loved to cook. And because Panera had raised their wages, because the job market was so tight, she had, in her 50s, come back and work for Panera, and she's baking bread there, and she says she loves it. It's fantastic.
Oh, they have good bread. I love Panera.
And it's great that someone has those types of opportunities, and we're creating an economic environment where people like that are allowed to come back into the workforce. And so that's what we focus on every day at AFP. We want to make sure that people have that opportunity, and we want to make sure that government is not interfering in our lives to allow us to get there. Another bill that we supported this year was a bill to reform our bail system. Right now, we had a situation with our bail where people were being kept in jail because they couldn't make bail. They simply couldn't afford it. And one of the things we found is that when people are kept in jail, they lose their job, they lose their home, they can lose their car, they can lose everything they have because, simply put, they can't make the bail. If they set like cash bail of like $2,000 or $5,000, and sometimes even for misdemeanors, you see those types of bail levels. One of the things we worked with and the legislature passed this year, and the governor will soon sign this, is a bill, Senate Bill 556, that will reform that system so that people aren't being detached from their life and losing their jobs, because not only are they not adding to our economy, but they're draining from our economy, because we have to spend, in many cases, between 110 and up to 260, depending on the county, dollars a day to keep these people behind bars, and that goes right onto your property tax bill, right onto your property. That's a county expense. So these are the types of changes that we're working for every single day in the state of New Hampshire. You try to make sure that everybody has that opportunity, and that means, like I said, a solid education at the best education setting for that child, not necessarily the one, the zip code.
Right.
That means that we have good jobs, and we have an attraction for employers to bring their jobs here, and the employers that are here to grow here as opposed to leaving the state. And then finally making sure that everybody is able to be a participant in this economy. I remember back in the last 15 years ago or so, when George W. Bush was talking about an ownership society, meaning you own your opportunity to be a participant in the society and in the economy. And I think that we've worked hard to try to move the ball forward in the state of New Hampshire. That doesn't mean we've won everything. Certainly ESAs are an example of a case where we fell a little short working with a number
and
of
in science, tech, and energy, I know that you've come to testify.
And we want to do things, there's a lot more work to do. Education is one area. Obviously, we have some of the highest electricity costs in the state of New Hampshire, and we've worked tirelessly, and thankfully Governor Sununu has been a great ally. He understands it because he was running the Waterville Valley Resort, an intense user of electricity.
Right.
And when you're paying such an enormous amount, but you're trying to compete with other ski areas across the country, and you can't maybe pay for another high-speed lift chair, or maybe you can't pay for another enhancement to your facility because your electricity costs are so high. That's a competitive disadvantage.
Right.
And particularly in the manufacturing sector. Our manufacturing sector has taken, frankly, a beating since 2000. The 2000 census said we had 98,000 people working in manufacturing in New Hampshire. And that's important, because manufacturing jobs actually pay substantially more than the average wage in the state of New Hampshire. They're good jobs.
Right.
They're not people pushing two buttons to do a punch press. This is advanced manufacturing. People running CNC machines, and
What's
we have
a CNC machine?
it's a computer-controlled machine that actually does a lot of the work of specialized cuts and things like that.
Right.
And we were at 98,000 in 2000. Right now we're about 68,000.
Wow.
So we've seen a substantial step back, and we're not going to get those jobs back in manufacturing when we have some of the highest electricity costs in the state.
That's right.
And because, as you know, manufacturing is very electricity intensive. And other states can create a more compelling reason to come here. Even Maine. Maine
I'm
has
so glad
much
the
better.
governor vetoed those two bills on the subsidies. I voted against them.
Yep, I did too.
In the committee, and I voted against them on the floor.
And I suspect there's going to be a big fight. But here's a situation. We have to ask ourselves an important question. It's not just about how things might impact today. And I know that a lot of people say, well, today we could do this. It's about what is our economy going to look like 5 years from now, 10
Right.
years from now. What if, and I know Representative Notter, being on the Science and Tech Committee, knows this firsthand. What if the Seabrook plant goes offline? And we
good.
lose
We
what
need
it
it.
represents between 55 and 57% of the state's electricity
Right.
capacity, and that goes offline. What are we going to do? How are we going to start having a scenario where we can have the electricity that meets our economy's needs and meet our personal needs? We all
Right.
want to know that when we flip the switch, the light goes on.
Then you'd have Londonderry, Granite Ridge here, that will generate more power because they generate every so often for peak power. Okay, so we should have gotten cheaper power here in Londonderry, but there was a big fight over that. There was something I wanted to ask him there, that you were a big pusher on the business tax credits for education. And everyone said the sky was going to fall, the public schools were going to fold, they couldn't do it. Here in Londonderry, which we got great schools, we got a 99.9% graduation rate because our
Wow,
adult
that's good.
education. But anyways, only 2 kids left, okay, and went to other schools. The fit just wasn't there. So we didn't get hurt at all. I mean, that fight, you remember how you were involved with that fight on?
Sure. I was
and
actually
then-
working. I was actually working in the House with you, and I know
Right.
you both are big supporters of the education.
Remember all the
choice.
scare tactics, everything?
Sure, the
that-
very arguments they make that this is going to utterly destroy public schools, and the thing about that argument that shows that it falls flat. Our enrollment has been dropping dramatically,
Right.
substantially. We are seeing, and it's a concerning demographic trend.
But yet our costs keep going up.
Well, there's no question our costs keep going
Mm-hmm.
up, but the amount of people who would leave via education savings accounts or the education choice scholarship that we passed in 2012, the amount of students who would leave statistically would be noise compared to how much the larger trend of dropping enrollments is affecting the town of Londonderry School Department. It's simply, you look at some of the other states that have passed ESAs, and they're looking at a maximum of 2%. Well, yet across the state, we've seen our enrollments dropping by, in some districts, as much as 30%.
Right.
So, and that's a concerning demographic trend, no doubt. No
Families are
doubt.
having 2 kids. I mean, it's not like before, 6, 8, 10
Yeah,
kids.
and-
Well,
You know what I mean?
I have 6.
No, I have 7. But I mean, in today's society, they're not getting married till they're 30.
Absolutely.
They're
So
not, and
That's true.
he's still single.
there you go. So
available.
and living in Bedford, so
And
it's like
available.
I'm paying for the Bedford School Department. That's for
right.
sure. But the net effect is that ensuring that students, and I think we saw students, particularly one in Danville recently, and then we saw, unfortunately, a student take her life, an 11-year-old,
Right, what a
because she
shame.
was being bullied.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it have been great if she had had an opportunity when she was being bullied to say, this school isn't working for us,
That's right.
and the family could have said, let's get her out of that environment, and put her somewhere
right.
where they could be safe.
Yep.
Or that young girl, the courageous young girl, 9-year-old in Danville, who got up and spoke out
Mm-hmm.
against the bullying she's facing in school. Instead of saying, nope, sorry, you're trapped in that school.
Right.
That's where you have to go because that's your zip code and that's where your parents live.
We,
Instead, we have the opportunity to give them another choice.
I was at a county government meeting when we heard the news about the 11-year-old in Manchester, and the hat was passed immediately, and we raised
I made a
raised
donation,
money, made a
you
donation,
know, to
and
help out.
GoFundMe
Yeah.
as well.
Who plans to bury a child?
No one.
Nobody does.
I had a cousin who was four days older than me who was killed at age 18 by a drunk driver, and I'll tell you that it totally transforms a parent's and family's life.
Right.
It's a stunning thing, and there's no way of getting around it. It just changes everything. But I to the extent that from a policy perspective, we can make sure that family has an opportunity because they knew she was being bullied.
That's right.
They knew she was
And
being
they
bullied.
parents gone to the
see,
school.
I know somebody that knows a family, and she didn't know about the bullying because that was the first question I asked when I heard about it. I said, was she being bullied? And she said, and my friend said no because she didn't know.
I just from the news reports, it suggested
Right.
that her
And
family
I
knew.
saw the next day
There's
in the
been a lot of
paper, that's
issues
what
by
it
the
said.
what I
Right,
read
the family
in the paper.
suggested that she was being
Right.
being bullied in
They'd
school.
gone to the school and everything and brought the issues up, and
And I think that for families like that, we want to make sure that there's another alternative, so that
right.
they're not trapped in that one single school. So that's another example, and I think that there are a whole host of other areas in which in which Americans for Prosperity is involved, and particularly trying to reduce regulations. I saw up at a bill signing ceremony. There was a bill where Governor Sununu was signing it to reduce. It was a House Bill 1104. That's a bill to reduce regulations dramatically, and not only that, but to move a lot of the services online.
Right.
As someone who started a small business in the state of New Hampshire, I can tell you when you actually have to truck yourself up to Concord to file a business, right? I mean, this is not how most states do it.
Right.
We need to move ourselves into the
The new
21st
technique,
century
I agree.
and embrace
Yeah,
it and
very.
say let's make ourselves as easy to do business as possible. And this legislation that was passed this year, and I know both of you supported it, went a long way to simplifying that route, and
Yeah.
particularly on the administrative side. Now, I've worked in the executive branch. I was a director under Commissioner Stephen at Health and Human Services.
And that's when I met you.
And
Yeah.
one of the things that we found is let's make sure that we're living up to our timelines. But a lot of state agencies don't live up to their timelines.
And you and Stevens, I mean, it was a no-brainer for people to get services in home versus being in a nursing home and let people live in their homes. Who knew something like that would work and save the state money when you guys brought that up?
We had a great team when we were at Health and Human Services. Folks like Jim Fredema, folks like Richard Kellogg, Kevin Smith, who's now the town manager here in Londonderry, did an absolutely outstanding job to make government accountable. I remember Commissioner Stephen put a sign on the wall, and it said the mission was to make sure that in everything we do, we're delivering value to the taxpayers at the services that our customers deserve. I mean, and we worked hard to treat everybody with dignity and respect, but it always started with the taxpayers and those people receiving services, and the providers came second.
Right.
They came second. It's like we weren't concerned about whether or not the providers were happy. We're wondering about whether the taxpayers are getting value and whether the people
Which
getting
is- that's a
services were
no-brainer.
getting quality
You
services.
had mentioned House Bill 1104, and you said that we both supported it. So you keep track of how we
We
vote?
do.
Yeah.
Every year, Americans for Prosperity puts out a scorecard, and I just want you to know we're going to make a surprise announcement here on the show that we have 2 award winners. Representative Notter, you have received as getting an A+. Now, to get an A+,
Wow.
I haven't had an A+
to get
in
an
a long time.
A+, you have to vote correctly in each of the 14 votes that AFP scored this year, and you have to attend them all. Al missed a few votes, so.
Uh-oh, where were you?
Oh, I was actually,
Men's room.
well, I was either in the Senate testifying. One day I actually missed session, you know, within the 2 years, because because of the storms. I planned out my vacation in between. Then the speaker
okay. I
brought in
brought in
a Thursday,
yes.
and I had already had plane tickets.
Right,
And I-
see,
and you
and I
get that.
missed an A+ when Corey Lewandowski was head of AFP because I was in the Senate while they were voting on
Well,
one
in
of
order
my
to get an
bills.
A+, you have to vote in every single vote that we score and vote, obviously,
Right.
in the pro-free market manner. And this year,
Congratulations.
this
I'm
year,
excited, thank you.
Representative Notter
Look at that,
received
yeah,
the
she
General
did.
Oh, and there
John
it is.
Stark
You
Award.
can see
Wow.
John Stark in the background there, and it's in a frame.
Yep.
So this
But
will go on the wall.
not to forget Al. Al won the Ebenezer Mudgett Champion of Freedom Award.
That's the one I got last year. But last year there was
that's-
a pine tree in the background.
Well,
that-
we try to mix it up. We want to make sure.
That's nice. And that's for an
And-
A, score an A?
That's an A. It's
A
an
for Al.
A rating. A for
Yeah,
Al. So it's
A
like
for
we
Al,
planned it
that's
that
So
way.
nice.
I got the Ebenezer
Well,
Mudgett Award
thank
last
you.
year, and I'm like, and who is Ebenezer Mudgett? And then I was at the Ebenezer Brewery in Merrimack.
Abel Ebenezer
Abel
in
Eb-
Merrimack,
and
right in your district.
I don't drink beer, but I went there and they were selling this book, $10, and about Ebenezer Mudgett. So I read it, The Pine Tree Riot, and you have an event every year about the Pine Tree Riot. And then before you talk about that, I got to tell you a story. There's always books on the table. One of the
Absolutely.
weeks when we taped, the book I had out was The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson. And in that book, it talked about the World's Fair and this murderer that was on the loose and killing all these people during that time. And his last name was Mudgett, and he was from New Hampshire. So I was wondering if he was related to Ebenezer Mudgett.
I don't know the answer to that. I got to tell you, my ancestry in the 18th century of New Hampshire isn't so hot. I do know that Ebenezer Mudgett was one of a series of folks who rose up in the Pine Tree Riot. This was an example of citizens taking action against an unjust law. The colonial governor at the time determined that any tree, a white pine tree whose diameter was more than 12 inches, regardless of whose property it was on, that tree belonged to the king. And that was a real imposition because white pine is what dominates a lot of parts of New Hampshire. It's the number one type of tree you'll find, and it's a great wood not only for making masts, which is really where the king wanted it, but also because it's both flexible and sturdy. It's great for making homes and things like that. So taking away people's property, just basically taking people's property and saying we're taking your property away, was a huge issue. And in 1772, April 13th, and the sheriff and his deputy actually went down to the town of Ware, which is in northern Hillsborough County, and went to the mill owner, who they determined had been cutting down and milling white pine trees with more than 12 inches diameter, and told him that he could pay a huge fine, or he would be arrested. And they had actually gone first to 4 mills in Goffstown, and the Goffstown mill owners just paid their fine. The folks in Ware, being a little saltier, decided they weren't going to put up with that, and they said no. So the sheriff and his deputy went to the local inn, and overnight, Ebenezer Mudgett, who owned two mills in Ware, and a bunch of his folks got together, and let's just say they they let the sheriff and his deputy know that they weren't going to have any part of it, and they beat him with switches from the trees and put him on their horses and tied them down and rode them out of town. Ultimately, they came back and arrested 8 of the 30 or so people who were involved. And in the process of arresting these folks, they took them to jail. But given that it was English common law, they were entitled to a jury of their peers. And the justices who were serving were from these areas, and they realized just how big an imposition it was. And they let these 8 people off with a penalty of 20 shillings, which is kind of like getting a parking ticket for beating up a sheriff or his deputy and sending them on their way. So that act, which was, some people say, is the first act of organized resistance against the crown, happened right here in Ware, New Hampshire. And many people feel as though the act and the light penalty that was given to the people in the act sort of set the stage for the Boston Tea Party in August of the following year.
Wow.
So there's a lot because a lot of the people in Boston said, well, if you do that, and all you're going to get is a slap on the wrist.
Right. Yeah.
What's the harm to dressing up in blackface or dressing up like Indians as they tried to do, and they went on and they broke open the British tea and dumped it in the harbor, and so for us it's an important symbol of how, if government gets away from the people, if government loses its accountability, the people will take action to step and defend their rights. And in many cases, in ways, that's a lot of what AFP does. We don't advocate beating up sheriffs and deputies, but we advocate people taking direct action.
Well, freedom.
And standing up for your rights and holding people accountable for their actions. And accountability is a two-way street. It can be a carrot or it can be a stick. When someone does something the wrong way, we'll certainly step right in and hold them accountable. Such as you mentioned, when Governor Hassan vetoed the first tax relief package, and she said, I have to veto this. It's going to create a $90 million hole in the budget over that. It's actually led to a record high business taxes, business tax revenues. Despite the fact the rate has come down, the actual taxes coming in have gone way up.
We have $100 million surplus or something. She said it was going to be a $90 million deficit.
Specific to this year, it's looking like we're going to have a surplus of about $135 to $138 million from business taxes, when she said we were going to have a $90 million hole, which, I mean, basically just shows that economics works, free markets work.
Right.
And when you make your state more competitive and you go out of your way to give employers a reason to want to come and grow in your state, they'll do it. And we've done that. We've gone from the very bottom, as far as the rankings, to in the middle. There's still more work to do.
Yeah, you're right.
And we can still move further to the top. But at the end of the day, I look at a state like New Jersey, which is having a major budget deficit. And as a result, they're looking at raising their business tax rates to the highest in the country, to which I say, go get them. Do it. And then we'll just go to the New Jersey businesses and say, come to New Hampshire.
Well, you know what got me a few years ago, and I used to say it all the time, Hassan and then Lynch, they're all bragging about our low unemployment. But what they never brought up to the people was the many that fell off the rolls
they
of
stopped
unemployment.
looking for work.
So now we're fortunate here in New Hampshire, even though we got low unemployment, a lot of these people that weren't counted, because we should have had a higher unemployment in my opinion, but they're all going back to work now. And
Absolutely.
you talk about 55, or
Absolutely.
you know, people 60 years old getting back out into the workforce.
Absolutely, and it's great news. It's fantastic.
Oh,
a
it's
success
unbelievable.
Story. It warms my heart when I see that every single month. It's like a hockey stick. Since that last business tax package went into effect on January 1st of this year, it's like a hockey stick. The number of jobs, the number of people
Right.
working in the state, and again, the economists are stunned. Where are these people coming from? Well, they've been waiting for an opportunity, and now we're giving them that opportunity, and they're having an opportunity to transform their lives for the better and make their lives, you know, it could be like a husband's working. Now a wife says, hey, look, now there's a really good opportunity now, I'm going to move into it. So now you have a two-parent family. And that benefits the entire community. That doesn't just benefit that family.
Right.
It benefits the whole community.
Well, we reap the benefits too through the federal tax break, because now that's more profit for the businesses, and that's more BET tax.
And our AFP also was very active at supporting the tax relief package, which.
Oh, you were up there every day. I was
six
impressed with
months
you
now.
and your people.
6 months. Oh no, down in Washington too.
Yeah.
6 months ago, it's gone into effect, and the impact that it's had has been staggering for our economy. You know, our unemployment's down to what, 3.7%. It's just unbelievable, and we're even better here in New Hampshire. And I think that that's a great example of how good policy actually transforms people's
Right.
lives for the better. I'll tell you that when you can sit there and you can go to bed at night knowing that there are thousands more people working in the state of New Hampshire because of what you do, it gets easy.
right.
Makes it a lot easier to get up the next morning and go carry the torch and the shield
Less
again.
stress.
Yeah, I didn't like the threat. I sat in as helping out in science technology. When they came in with that subsidies bill on that energy
Biomass.
company, I didn't like the scare tactics. Oh, we're going to lose
Oh,
100
yes.
jobs.
Yeah.
Well, 100 jobs, but yet I'm going to raise,
They said it would
you
be a
know,
domino
electric
effect.
bills on all the seniors, all the people. Seniors are already struggling that are on Social Security.
Right, and they're not getting
You know?
raises. And every year
Right.
they come back and ask for more money.
Right, and I think that that's a great example of how bad policy. In other words, someone who's saying, you know what, that's a market signal. If it requires a huge subsidy for you to stay in business, that's a signal that it's important to recognize that maybe you don't have the best business model. Maybe, and because they're talking about in total with all of these plants, they're talking about 900 jobs. But how many jobs aren't coming to New Hampshire because of our high electric
That's right.
rates?
Yeah.
Probably a lot more than 900. And those jobs don't need
We
to be
hear it all the
subsidized
time.
by seniors, by low-income people, whereas these jobs do need to be subsidized by seniors and low-income people who are struggling to get by paycheck to paycheck. I mean, while a lot of people are moving up financially, and that's
Oh, yeah.
great news, there are still people at the bottom, and people, particularly people on fixed incomes, who are struggling at the lower end.
Right.
And we can't, while we're doing policy that's helping a lot of new people benefit, we can't forget about the people at the bottom who we
I
can't
agree.
create policy that makes their lives harder.
I had a question for you before we run out of time. Do you endorse candidates?
We don't. We
No,
don't.
they're nonpartisan. Right?
We are not a partisan organization. We work with anybody and everybody. And I'll tell you, it's this past year, the bail reform bill we talked about, that's, I think, going to benefit the lives of a lot of people who keep them out of jail and allow them to keep their lives
Save
going.
the state money.
It saved us taxpayers money. As a bill we worked on with Senator Dan Feltus, not someone that we would
And he's
normally
a
consider
Democrat.
to be
Right, some
yeah,
people
I
know.
see him a lot in science, tech, and
right.
energy as well.
And so we'll work with anybody. We like to say we like to quote Frederick Douglass. We'll unite with anyone to do good and no one to do harm.
Now, real quick here, because we're about a minute and 40. The sales tax thing here. You guys coming out with a plan to try to?
I'll tell you. There are some plans in the works with Governor Sununu and his office as a way of trying to find a way to make sure that New Hampshire is protected from other states' policy. Now, other states shouldn't set our policy, and we shouldn't
Right.
set other states'
Right.
policy. Now, the Congress obviously has the ability to, through interstate commerce, set the rules. But as long as Congress stays silent, we shouldn't allow other states to force
Us,
our
that's
employers
right. I
to
agree
become the
with-
tax
we
collectors
may
for
have
them.
to do some legislation.
10,000
Yeah.
taxing authorities across the state. There are 5 states that don't have a sales tax, but even within those states, a number of those states allow counties and municipal governments to have sales taxes.
Right,
so
which we do,
there's only
yeah.
2 or 3 states that have no
right.
sales tax, and New Hampshire's one of them.
Greg, if somebody wanted to work with you, because you do a lot of phone calling, you have a lot of teams in Portsmouth and in Manchester, how does somebody get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So the easiest way, of course, is coming to our website. If you go to americansforprosperity.org, that's all spelled out, americansforprosperity.org. you can go onto our website and you can click to volunteer, and we will give you all the information you can need about how you want to volunteer. If you say that, such as you want to come in and knock doors or come in and make phone calls, one of our people will come and contact you. So we want to make ourselves easy to do business with as well. And certainly if people want to come by, our office is in 340 Granite Street and in Portsmouth at 767 Islington.
Awesome. It's an honor working
Thank
with
you.
Thanks for presenting us with these on
This
the
was a
show.
great day because a lot of people aren't aware of AFP. This is Who's Looking Out for You, and we'll be back with another show.